Hello and welcome to the Fall Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge Masterclass, lesson number 5. Again, I'm excited you're here with me, even though the weather outside is frightful. Inside here, it's delightful to be with you, teaching you how to paint a portrait you can be proud of. I'm so excited here that you've made it this far, and in the last step, we added several glazes at various spots, the background, the foreground. Also developed some skin tone shading on the woman's face, added a glaze onto the form of her body to give that more three-dimensionality and depth. Basically just working the entire painting and developing it, like I've said in the past, using this metaphor, developing it like a Polaroid photo, where you start with that white canvas and that sketch, and then you slowly add colors to the entire surface using the translucency effects of matte medium and creating a vivid, rich surface that almost glows. So that's what we want to do in this lesson here, is just push it further, and we're going to continue to add layers to the entire area and just, again, build up some vibrancy, some depth, and really take this portrait to the next level. I think in this lesson here, you're going to see a transformation take place in your own painting too. Now, I want to let you know if in the last lesson you were struggling at all, maybe you applied a couple of glazes that just didn't quite turn out. I want to let you know that's normal. This is a new technique for many people taking this class, and it's a different way of painting than what you're used to. We're not painting opaquely. We're not painting from background to foreground. Instead, we're covering the entire area and doing it very light, very translucent. And it does take a little bit of time to get the knack, to get the technique down of mixing tiny portions of pigment, your paint, into large copious amounts of matte medium. And if you stick with this technique and you take the time to learn it, you take the time to apply it, it will become easier for you. You're going to find the glazes much more natural as you apply them. You're going to have a lot more fun. But if you're struggling right now at all, you put down a few glazes that look too dark or the colors were just too vibrant in your face, don't worry, because we'll be able to balance that out by working on other areas and just leaving off in the areas that are too dark for a time and making sure everything else, is worked evenly, because value is completely relative. It does take many layers to make the painting come alive. Well, if you haven't signed up for the Portrait Challenge, I definitely encourage you to do that. We've got artists all over the world currently, as I'm teaching this class, who are taking the Fall Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge. And you can sign up at realisticacrylic.com/fall-acrylic-portrait-painting-challenge. Now, when you sign up, and it is free by the way, when you sign up, I will send you the welcome kit, which includes the supplies list, so all the materials, the paints, brushes you need to paint with us. You'll also get the gridded reference photo, full resolution. You can download it, print it off, put it on your Kindle or iPad, and you'll have that right next to your canvas so you can paint exactly what you see along with us. Also give you the palette layout guide so you know how to lay out your paints for optimal mixing, and so your paints won't get muddy as you're trying to replicate the colors that I'm showing you here in the videos. And then finally, of course, I'll send you the masterclass lessons, and right now we're on number 5 of 8, so we have 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 4 more to go. I'll be sending those to you as well via email, and really look forward to sharing each step with you. So go ahead and sign up. Again, like I said, it is free, and when you sign up, you're going to find that you'll be able to paint a portrait you can be proud of, because I'm going to show you how to do it every step of the way. All right, well, I'm going to dive in here with a word of prayer and just ask God to help me and help us as we paint, and then we'll get started. So Father, I ask a blessing here on this session. I pray, Lord, that you would enable me to teach this class well. Lord, we need your help. I know I need your help, and the students need your help too, to be able to just paint our portraits realistically, convincingly, capture the beauty here of this woman, Lord, that you created, and just to portray not only her likeness, but also, you know, who she is as a person, and to really just develop those skills, Lord, that we can take into future paintings. So Lord, I pray for each and every artist. You bless them, you guide their steps, provide for them, keep them safe, Lord, protect their families. Enable me to teach this well, to be able to articulate each step and how to do it. And I pray for the students, if any of them are feeling frustrated or they're experiencing any roadblocks, they just push through and they be able to develop that perseverance that'll carry them on as artists into other works. So Lord, bless this time in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, and with that, we'll get started. All right, and you're going to want to arrange your materials around you as you begin this painting session. You want to have a 1-inch flat brush, a 1/2 inch flat, and just a medium round. This is a size 6. And of course, we have our colors all laid out. I'm not going to go through those again, but you can look in previous lessons to see how we arrange our colors. You should have your colors arranged by now if you've been following along here in the classes. And I want to put out a generous amount of matte medium just to start with. Get that in the middle of the mixing area, and it's good to have a clean mixing area for each session. Makes it just a lot easier to paint and mix and not have muddy colors. Okay, so I'm going to dive in here right away with a glaze on her hair. So that's going to be the first step here in this lesson. Is I want to darken the value of her hair, and let's do that. I'm going to take some Romber Dark, and again we're going to mix that by putting a little dab, just a little dab away from the matte medium, and we're going to mix out of that dab and then into the dollop of matte medium and control the amount that's going on the mixture. Now it is good to have a white card. You just use a regular sheet of white paper for this, and you can test your glazes before you apply them to the canvas. So I need to mix some ultramarine blue in as well. So a dab of ultramarine blue and Romber Dark. And we're going to make kind of a medium gray, and I'll show you on the white card what that looks like now. You can see that next to what we had previously with just the Romber Dark on the left, and now with a little ultramarine blue added on the right. And I'm going to add this over her entire hair, and we're just going to darken the shadow portion. And we're going to bring that all the way up to these little pockets on top. That'd be these small little areas on top. We want to get those filled in as well. And you can turn your brush at various angles to really use the chisel edge and just get it in those little spots and fill that in. I'm just going to go outside the boundary on this spot here because I see in the reference photo that the pattern kind of goes outside the original area that I had. Now, you should still be able to see your sketch very easily under your glazes at this point, and even see some of the additional shading. If you followed, my recommendations on the sketch, you'll have some shading within the shading. So we have this entire mass here, which is a dark value. It's a shadow. The hair's kind of backlit or toplit. And within this large mass of shading, we also have some more shading that's showing the interior forms of her hair. Now I can still see those. It's getting almost to the point where I can't see them. So pretty soon I'm going to have to do some shading on top of the shading to get those isolated. And I use this metaphor in the first acrylic portrait challenge, but this would be like the concept of nations and states. You'd have this large geographical area. This is kind of your shape that you're trying to create, and then within that shape you've got smaller areas, and the values occupy specific boundary lines, both in terms of size and shape and placement, and those little areas would be like states or provinces within your larger nation. And we have that within her hair. I'm not quite ready to put that in. I have to let this dry first. But we'll do that. It really helps when you use these short little choppy strokes. Flip your brush around. Try to vary the strokes, get them going one direction, another direction. Kind of crisscross diagonal strokes is the best way to really get smooth application of paint. And we're going to apply just a little bit on the top as well. I'm just going to fill this area up next to her neck and ear area. And then let's take the same glaze while we have it on our brush. And let's just darken this area right up here. Right up here, this area below her hair. And then going into her eyebrow area, because this part of her skin is very dark. Again, value is more important than color, and a lot of artists really want to get those skin tones, get the correct coloring, but much more important than that is to get the shape of these values, which really show the three-dimensionality of the face, the structure of the face. And we just want to get the colors in, you know, loosely. It's you can dial in the colors later on, but if you get those values locked in, that's gonna get you the most mileage for each brush stroke. So I'm going to, you see how I'm actually using this darker, kind of almost grayish color, and I'm just hitting the darkest values on her face right now. I don't want to waste this opportunity while I have this paint on my brush. I want to get that in there. And there's a little bit of a shadow I can put in under her lip. We're getting that in. And I think I'm going to also place it right under her chin as well, and on her neck, because this is a very dark value overall. Now I have to pay attention to the reference photo, and where I discern the colors getting a little warmer, I don't want to put this glaze on there. Why? Because this glaze has ultramarine blue in it, and that could end up ruining the warmth of that color. So you want to be cognizant not only of the light and dark aspect of your glaze, but also the color. You want to really look at your reference photo and say, okay, I see the shadow, but is it getting a little warmer on this side? Well, then I should leave off and not apply this glaze that has blue mixed in it. Again, this glaze, and I showed you on the gray card, or the white card rather, is gray, right? So we don't want to apply that on this warmer area of her neck. I'll just show you right here where I'm applying this shadow, this glaze right on this juxtaposition between the highlighted area and the shadowed area. And I'm gonna, yeah, I think I already applied it there, so I have to let that dry. I'm gonna apply just a little bit below her cheek here. I missed that spot. If you miss an area, try to really make sure you don't disturb paint you put down, but use a very light approach. And I think that's going to be about it for this layer. I have to let this dry. But while I have this color handy, let's add a glaze to her shirt. And I think this color is pretty close. We'll just have to mix a little more into it. So let's add a little ultramarine blue to what we already had here. And just a touch of alizarin crimson, so that's just a small amount. So we just dip right to the edge, we wipe it off so we can pull that color into the mixture. Basically, we want a larger portion of blue than alizarin crimson, maybe 2/3 blue, ultramarine blue to 1/3 alizarin crimson, but we also have a little bit of ombre dark as well. So it would be a ratio of maybe 50% ombre dark to about 35% ultramarine blue to 15% alizarin crimson, and then matte medium to thin it out and make it very translucent at a ratio of 90% medium to 10% paint. And I'll just kind of show you the glazes. Now, they will get darker as we go along. They're going to get more opaque the closer we get to the finish line on the painting. But for now, this is going to be pretty light because this area on her clothing is much, much lighter than her hair. So we have to make sure that this glaze is not as dark as that previous glaze we used for her hair. Okay, so it's got more matte medium in it. But let's apply it here just to the shadowed portion of her clothing, and we're keeping these strokes vertical to basically run parallel along with the texture of her clothing. You can use a 1/2 inch flat. You could even use a 1 inch flat too at this point. But this 1/2 inch flat will give me a lot of dexterity. And we'll put a little bit of a shadow right in here. Just enhance that a little bit. Oh, and there's the slightest little shadow right here on the right-hand side, the highlighted side of her shirt. And I want to develop that as well. And then let's add a little more of a bluish mixture. Now notice on my palette I have a portion that's got a little more alizarin crimson right here, if you can see that. And then this portion here's got more blue. I know it's a little difficult to see the colors with the foil palette, but it's just a little bit of a different warmth right here. A little cooler down here, a little more reddish up there. And so I can look on my reference photo and say, hey, I see that the shadow here on this portion of her blouse is bluer than the part up here that has a little more red. So you really want to look at your reference photo and discern what kind of colors you're seeing there. And I see a little more of a pinkish hue on that part of her arm right here, but down here it's got more blue, and that's why I'm choosing this bluer portion of the glaze. And I'm going to place that right down here, and I'm going to cut all the way up along the edge of her arm. Kind of just go over what I had from before. I'm going to go past that original glaze that I had from before just a bit, and that's going to develop a little bit of gradation. And I call this the segmented blending technique, where you basically have one layer and you go past the original layer just a bit. You go on top of that original layer, but you're going to exceed the boundary line, the edge of it, by a little bit. And by doing that, it develops gradation or shading. So we're going to bring it a little further than what we had the first time we applied it in the last lesson. And now we're developing a little bit of a three-dimensionality here in her bust area. So a little bit right there. And let's see, I'm going to choose the somewhat pinker version for this side, because I noticed that difference in color from the reference photo. And I'm going to keep my brush strokes following the contours of her clothing pretty well. Now again, I'm not going to paint on the top. I still haven't touched this area yet. I want this to be much lighter in value. All right, we're going to work on the background and develop the colors in the trees a little bit more. I'm going to take some ultramarine blue and just dip it in here to the corner of this matte medium that I have. It's still relatively clean. I'm going to also mix in just a bit of phthalo blue. I'm wiping it off to the side, but now I'm pulling from that and putting that in the mixture. So we're having basically about a 50-50 mixture, although phthalo blue is a stronger pigment than ultramarine blue, so in actuality it's probably more like 70 ultramarine blue, 30% phthalo, but visually it's going to be more like 50-50. And I'll show you this on the white card what that looks like just right now. You can see it. It's a nice almost cerulean blue right there. You can see that. And we're going to mix just a little bit of Indian yellow into this. So let's pull that, wipe it off from the side, and we're going to introduce it here into the mixture. And we just want to make kind of a, I would say hunter green, but it's very diluted with glaze, with matte medium. And we want to basically go into this area here on the tree and develop a little bit of shading that we can work out of. Yeah, I want it to be just a little more opaque than that. If you get a little bit of that previous mixture of the grayish color that we use for her hair and her shirt, that's okay. But again, I just want to get this greenish color into the tree area. And we're going to develop not only color but shading too. You know what? I'm going to add just a little bit of raw sienna. A little bit of raw sienna. I think it just needs a little more punch. So I'm adding some raw sienna. Let's show you that glaze on the white card, what that looks like now. You can see it here. Here it is, right here. You can see that. Just a really faint olive green almost. And again, we're just going to add this, just over the tree. We're trying to bridge the area between this, the actual trunk of the tree and the branches, which are out of focus and blurry, into the highlighted areas. So I really want to pay attention to the reference photo, what's going on. I see some shadows in various spots. I want to place them in those spots, but leave room for the highlights on the right-handed side. And I see it is a little lighter on the right side of the tree, so I'm just leaving room for that, so to speak. Down here it's a little bit darker, so I'm going to create that form down there as well. Doesn't have to be exactly like the reference photo, I just want it to be similar. And I'm going to add also some shading to this area left of her hair. Just put a little bit of shading to the left of the tree and it gets a bit lighter on top. So I'm not applying the glaze all the way to the top there. And then here I'm applying the glaze just to the left side of this little splotch, this highlight. And it's okay if you paint on top of her hair. It's a darker color, so it's okay if you get a glaze on top of a darker color. So don't worry, you don't have to paint just up to the edge. Go over the hair, no problem at all. Yeah, and I think that's good for now. It's going to take a lot more, but just trying to push it more in the right direction. This really is a matter of patience. Okay. All right, and now let's work on the woman's hair again. I want to add those interior shadows. Where I was talking about the nations versus states, I want to do the states, so to speak, those smaller little areas within the larger context of the geographical, so to speak, area of her hair. Let's work on that. I'm going to take some Romber Dark, and we can actually just work right on top of the glaze we had, the greenish glaze, because it's going to be getting darker. So we're just adding Romber Dark and Ultramarine Blue. And then let's add just a touch of alizarin crimson. Romber Dark, Ultramarine Blue, alizarin crimson. And this one is going to be getting a little more opaque. It's going to be getting a little bit darker. I'm going to show you on the white card what that looks like. So you can see this now compared to the other ones. It is much, much darker by comparison. And let's see how it looks. Make sure this is dry. Yep, it's dry up here. So now I'm going to take this half-inch flat and I'm going to start applying this glaze just to these little shadows within the shadows. Just really want to pay attention to my reference photo and follow what I see here as closely as I can. But the color you're applying should just be basically like a Payne's gray. There's no titanium white in it. It's still very translucent, but it has the ability to darken all of these areas. And so you really have to pay attention to those distinct shapes within the hair. All right, here's some of these distinct shapes we have. It gets just a little bit darker below this lock of hair. There is a cast shadow here. This lock of hair, you see this kind of almost V shape. It has thickness to it, so there's a lock of hair that's about this long, and then below it there's a shadow. So you want to place that shadow below that shape. Let this go all the way down to there. Place a shadow, and then we're going to bring this shadow out a little further. Let this go all the way down to there. You can use the chisel edge of your brush. That means you hold the brush at more of a perpendicular angle to the canvas and you're hitting it with just the tip rather than the flat part. And that allows you to get some detail control. Okay. I have to kind of figure out what's going on. So there's a little lock right here, and then this part next to her ear is darker. It's a little darker here, and then we fill this area in below. There's a shadow up here. We fill that area in. Just using the chisel edge. Now I'm going to add a dark glaze just to the right side of this little splotch right here, this little shape up here. So the dark glaze is going just to the right of that. Just to the right. Here I'm going to let it go all the way on the inside. I'm just using the corner of my brush. I have it tipped backward and I'm hitting it with the lower corner. So that again allows me to get a lot of detail, a lot of precision. Again, I have the brush tipped back. You can see the angle that it is on the canvas. It's not like this. No, I'm hitting it with this bottom edge right here, this bottom corner. And I'm going to add just a little dab right there. I'm going to add a little bit of a dab right here, selectively. Okay, and then I'm going to add another little dab right there, not the whole area, because I noticed that in the reference photo there's two little splotches. Add a little bit of a divot right there. And we're going to just define this edge right here. So it's darker right in the middle, gets a little lighter toward the bottom. Here it gets a little bit darker in the middle and lighter on that side. Now, we're continuing on this side of her hair. Right here there's a shadow as we get close to her scalp area, and there's a distinct shape, kind of like a half circle. So I just put in a glaze right on that area. And then there is a shape right on top of this that I want to capture. It's kind of like a long extended oval, and then we skip an area, and then there's another glaze we want to add just right there. I'm going to darken over some of my pencil lines. I can still see them a little bit, which is helpful. And there's a shape right here I want to capture. I'm add just a little more ultramarine blue to this mix. It's looking just a little browner than I'd like it to look. That's all right, because we'll have many more layers on to shift the color later, but I don't want to have to do so much work in that stage if I don't have to. Okay, I'm just extending this shadow up. And just want to see these little forms right here. And then up here there's a little dab that needs to go in there too. Now let's just darken these little locks down in the bottom. I'm going to hit just the edges of these braids. If you have to switch brushes, that's all right. You could actually switch to a round brush to get those details, just a small round brush. So it's a little tricky to do it with that 1/2 inch flat. And let's get these little areas just by her neck, right here. Just going over, we're refining and defining these edges a bit more. Oh, and there's a little spot I need to get up here. I missed that. Right up here. I don't know how I missed that shape, but I did. I think I was moving along the top edge and kind of missed this edge right here. There. Yeah, that's good. And there's a little area here I want to get below this lock of hair. All right, that's good. That's good. All right, let's add some detail work to her face. We're going to define some of the features like her eyebrows and eyelashes, eyelids, things like that. But even before we do that, let's also darken some of the shadows like on her cheek and neck as well. So I'm going to take, let's see, my 1/2" flat for now. Take my 1/2" flat, and I'm going to mix some ultramarine blue with raw umber dark and just a tiny bit of alizarin crimson. And let's show you what this glaze looks like on the white card. It is starting to get a little bit more opaque, but it's still very translucent. You can see that. And we'll test this out and see how this looks on the canvas. I'm just going to start. Yeah, that's probably a little too dark at this point. Let's make that a little more translucent. Squirt some matte medium right on the mixing area here. And we're just going to thin this out a little bit. So we're looking at still, maybe at this stage, about 80% matte medium, 20% pigment. And that should be good. So we just want to basically darken this entire area. Just darken that entire left-hand side. And we only want to bring this shadow out. We don't want to bring it out too far. So make sure you don't bring it all the way out into the cheek area yet. But just maybe about up to this line here. Don't even bring it all the way into the shading you've delineated. We're just going to overall darken this entire area a bit more. Add just a little more alizarin crimson to the mix. So on the white card, it's just getting a tiny bit warmer. I'm going to bring this below her neckline. Just darken this entire area. And I'm not going to bring it into this part of the neckline. There's a shadow that's going down at an angle, and I want to capture that. Also going to bring it up into her chin a little bit. It's just a little darker in that spot. And then this shadow here again going up to her neck and shoulder area where we have that strong highlight in the back, that backlighting. Bring that shadow just up into that point as well. And let's not neglect the interior where we just add a bit of this shadow just up here on her eye socket area. I'm not bringing it all the way to the top. I'm just going to bring it about to the level of her eyelid, because I do notice that there is a bit of a break there in the shadow. Let's switch brushes. Let's use the round brush for this. And I'm going to add just a little more alizarin crimson to the mix here, so that it looks something like this on your white card. Just a little more alizarin crimson. But it is still going to be pretty much that kind of grayish color. And I'm darkening her eyebrows at this point. I'm going to darken this other eyebrow. And I'm going to darken the shadow under her nose just a little bit, and her nostril. And then this shadow here, I'm painting in between those little decorative paint areas as much as I can, but if I go over those lines, not a big deal. All right, and now let's see if we can add a little more ombre dark to this mix, just make it somewhat darker, somewhat more opaque. Alizarin crimson, a bit of ultramarine blue, and I'll show you this on the white card. This should be a little more opaque than what we had before. So you can see that it's starting to get a little darker. But let's go over her eyelid area. And this brush is just starting to give me a little trouble. I'm going to switch brushes. That one was getting a little splayed out at the end. I'm going to take a brush that's in better shape, keep a better tip, and we're going to just go over her eyelid and her eye area. And I'm going to basically follow the top contour of her eyelid. I'm not going to go over the bottom one as much. Maybe I'll just get that little point in between the upper and lower eyelid fold. I'm going to define her pupil. Right now, the bottom edge of her iris. I'm going to spray my palette just to keep the paints really moist. It's a good idea if your paints are starting to dry out to spray them. For something like this, it's better that your paint is more fluid. If your paint is too tacky, you'll find it really difficult to do these fine details. So get your paint really nice and fluid. And we're just going to put this little edge in here. I'm going to bring that shadow out all the way to the edge of her eyelid. Okay, that's good. And I'm just going to define the edge of her upper eyelid fold a little bit. You don't want to bring the line all the way out, just on the left-hand side where we have more of the shadow. I'm going to just hit the bottom edge of her lower eyelid fold, just on the 7 o'clock position, and this bottom edge as well, just barely touching the surface. I'm going to also go over her nostril a little bit, darken that. We want to really darken everything at the same rate. And I'm going to just darken the edge of her lip as well. There's a little point on this left-hand side. I want to get that. The shadow under the lip, very important because the shadow under her lip is darker than the lip itself. So you want to get that accurate value. And this little shadow under her nose, I almost forgot that. It's well right on the ball of her nose. I don't want that glaze to be too dark though. But yeah, that little point right there, I want to get that in. Just the very bottom edge of it. All right. And I'm going to just glaze this edge of her ear. You might have to hold your hand on the left-hand side so you don't disturb any of the paint that you applied to this area. But I want to just get that little ear canal detail in. These are little areas I want to really define in while I have the opportunity here. And I'm going to just define the bottom edge of her jawline against her neck. So I'm using this round brush and I'm fanning away from the edge of her neck just to develop a little bit of gradation. following in the contour of her neck. And if you look at the reference photo, you'll see little folds of skin running along her neck, just little wrinkles that kind of follow that contour. So you can make your brush strokes kind of follow that contour as well, and then it won't be distracting if you have any deviation there. I'm just going to add a little more of a glaze here to this left side of her cheek. Now, if you're following along with me, make sure it's dry. With the time you spent on the eyebrows and the other details, this part should be dry, but just double check to make sure. I just want to darken this a little bit more. And I'm going to use brush strokes going in the opposite direction. Vary your brush strokes. If you vary them and have some going diagonally in one direction and then others going diagonally in the other direction, it'll give you a much smoother application of paint. So I'm going to have these going perpendicular to the other ones, and that should really smooth it out. So this glaze here has a little more raw umber dark in it. I just want to show you the color I've applied. It's a little less gray, a little more raw umber dark. Where is it? Right here. You can see that difference in color. So it's raw umber dark mixed with a little bit of ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. But raw umber dark is going to be the primary base color for it. And it's getting a little more opaque. Now we're looking at more of a, I don't know, 70% translucency, 70% medium, 30% pigment. Just kind of going over the areas I had before. I wanted to develop just a bit more shading before I call this lesson done. Put you in a good position here at this point to look back at your painting and see what you accomplished and really like what you've done. Now, let's see, that could get a little too dark there. I'm just going to dab that. Let's segue into a little bit of a lighter color. No, I tell you what, let's let that dry first. I want to let that dry because it might be really hard for you to blend out of those areas while it's still drying. Let's take this shadow color we just applied and apply it to the shadows under her feathers. I'm going to switch to this round brush. This is a size 4. And I'm just going to take that same glaze that I used before and I'm going to apply it under her feathers just to strengthen those shadows there. And I'm also going to apply it under this area under her blouse, this shadow being cast on top of her chest area as well. There. Now we're just kind of blending into the form of the feathers a little bit. And that should really work well. Okay, lastly, if your area here where you added these glazes on the shadows are all dry, if those are all dry, you can then dive in with this next level. We're going to tie in these shadows with more of the highlighted area of her face. So for that, let's take some burnt sienna and raw sienna, mix them together. Just on a clean area of the palette. And let's pull that into a little bit of raw umber dark as well. And we'll have that raw umber dark just to the right of the mixture so we can kind of get a good nuance here. Just add just a touch of alizarin crimson as well to this raw umber dark. Show you the mixture here. So I have an area that's a little bit lighter, a little bit more yellowish, and then this area is a bit darker and a little more reddish brown. All right, so I just have a couple different nuances. And I want to mix this to, let's see, maybe about, yeah, 70-30, 70% medium, 30% paint. You can see what it looks like on the white card here. Glazes are getting a little more robust at this point. And we're going to test it out. I just want to make sure that is dry. All right, so I can apply it on top of what I have here already. And I'm going to apply it on top of that glaze, and then it's going to go past it just a bit. So it's going to just go past that original shading a little bit onto the lighter area. And this is how we can develop some gradation. We're also going to apply it on this side of her face too. We'll apply it on this area around her eye socket into the forehead. Don't even try to paint around those little decorative white lines on her face at this point. Just, we can deal with those later opaquely. And we'll bring this all the way up into the lip area a little bit on top of her chin. And again, we just want to exceed that area, going on top of what we had and then going into the lighter portion a bit. You see how that works? You just overlap it, and as it comes up into this area that's a bit lighter, we're darkening the entire glaze, darkening the entire area, plus we're going past it just a bit as well. All right, here I'm going to bring this coloring into the rest of her neck. And I'm going to pull from the mixture that has a little more raw sienna and burnt sienna in it. So this side of the mixture. And this is where I'm going to differentiate, get a little of this warm color just on her neck area in the middle. Let's take this and apply it to that whole spot. And here I differentiate on the photo that it's a little warmer, a little more yellowish brownish right here. And I'm going to actually, I think, go over that entire area. And it goes down about that far. We're going to work on this area as well. Chest area down here, just get a little differentiation there. Now I'm going to pull from the slightly cooler side of the mixture. Have the warmer area, then the cooler area, but a little darker in pigment. I'm going to use that for this side of her chest. And actually that's still too reddish. Let's actually pull from this part of the palette where we had this somewhat more grayish brown mixture. And we'll kind of bridge the gap in between these two areas. And we'll apply this color here for this side of her chest because it is cooler in color. We want to make those differentiations between the colors. Here it's got a bit more of a yellowish cast to it, so I'm going to take a bit of raw sienna and I'm just going to apply this to this kind of grayish mixture that I had here. That was when we were working on just the shadows of her face. And I'm going to apply that right in here. I'll need to add a bit of matte medium to thin it out. And a little more raw sienna. Get a little more raw sienna there. All right, just apply that to the whole area. And that's a little darker than I wanted at this point, so I'm going to add a bit more matte medium to it and try again. There we go. That's what I wanted. I just want a color that has a little more of that yellowish tint to it. Okay, that's good. That's good. Just missed a little spot there from our last area. I'm adding darker glaze just in the spot by the edge of her neck. Now, I want to work on the right-hand side of her face, get back to what I was doing there. And let's kind of pull from the middle of this mixture. And I'm going to add just a bit of shading coming from her hair. That's an area that's often neglected, but it really adds a lot of depth. If you can add that shadow under the hairline, it'll make it look as if the hair actually has some depth to it. And we're just going to work out of this area. I'm using very short, choppy strokes. This is my 1/2 inch flat. I'm going to liven up this area right here under her eyebrows. I'm going to add a little color just to this right side of her face. But I'm going to leave this area in the middle alone because that's where it should be highlighted. That's what's catching the light. Her eyelid fold is probably projecting outward just a bit and catching that light. And I'm also going to add a little bit of a shadow right in here. Not so much a shadow, but just a darker value. Develop her skin tones at the same time. I'm going to have her nasolabial fold just kind of meeting that area a little bit. And I'm just going to use a dry brushing technique with a little less pressure to develop gradation at the end. I'm using now the lower corner of the brush and just sculpting a little more of a shadow under her lip. Now I'm coming back to this area on the left side, and then I also want to hit this area just below her lower eyelid fold rather, and it's got a little of that kind of yellowish orangish color. It's again raw sienna and burnt sienna mixed together with the glaze with the matte medium, and I just want to get that area saturated with a bit more color. I'm going to go over this area again. I think it's dried by now. And a little bit below her eyebrows. Yeah, okay. That should work for now. I better leave off here before the paint starts to set up. Yeah, I think now this is a good stopping point. All right, and you can see where we finished up here for this lesson. We covered a lot of ground. We were able to add some value structure to her hair. We were able to add some structure to the background and enrich the colors a little bit. And we also worked on the skin tones of her face and also some of her clothing as well. So the painting is coming alive. It's taking shape, and I thank you so much for watching this video, for taking part in the portrait painting challenge. If you haven't yet joined, you can do it. It's not too late. Sign up again at realisticacrylic.com, and you'll see that banner at the top of the page where you can sign up. I'd love to have you to be a part of this challenge. But hey, if you found this video helpful or if you found it encouraging, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel here for more videos like this. And if you have any questions, need any help, leave a comment below this video. You can get a hold of me within Realistic Acrylic Portrait School, and I'd love to be able to help you with your specific questions. But again, thank you so much for watching this video. Share this challenge with your friends, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. Let's add just a little bit of a shadow here, or a little more coloring in her lip area. I'm going to take Romber Dark, and I'm using the round brush, Romber Dark, and Alizarin Crimson. Her lips are not that pink. They do have a little bit of a pinkish color, but not very overt. So about an equal mixture of Romber Dark and Alizarin Crimson, and diluted with matte medium. We're looking for something like this. Here, show you on the white card. And we're going to add that just on the left hand side. Fill that in. We're going to put it on the interior. And it can flow all the way up onto the top area as well. And then just a little bit below on this shadowed portion going into the middle. I'm leaving this area in the middle alone, leaving the top area in the middle alone, so I'm just adding it just to those areas right there. And that's it. And that will start to develop some of the coloring and the structure for her lips.